So I just finished working on some things on the deuce here, checking some fluid level in the master cylinder. A couple things I wanted to talk to you about. One is the single circuit master cylinders that are in most of these deuces if you have a M35a2 or older, other than the 87 to 89 AS Force trucks. And obviously if you have an A3, then you have the dual circuit brakes. But we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about a remote master cylinder that you see for sale a lot to put in these trucks that have the single circuits. And it's a good idea, and no, we're not going to put one on it right now. It's not a bad idea, but a lot of people don't understand is that it adds some safety, but not as much as you think. So first, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the single circuit brakes that are in here, and I am going to be upgrading to dual circuits at some point, and I'd like to do the Air Force version, and I have my reasons for that. And it's easy to do the conversion, but it's not cheap, and it's also hard to find some of the parts. But anyways, let's talk about this single circuit brake system. First of all, in the TMs, your PMs, your pre-maintenance, preventative maintenance, I should say, will tell you to check the brake fluid once a week, I believe it is. And you should have .5 in here, not .3. And if you have .3, then you might want to do something about that. It's just not what's supposed to be in there, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. Okay, so you're supposed to check them once a week, and that's of course if they're used on a regular basis like that. So you could have longer intervals, and it could be a case of, well, for people that don't use them that much, it'd be like check them just before you use them. And regardless of whether you have to deal with DOT or not, and do pre-trips and all that stuff. Especially since these are single circuit, you should be checking those. So let's talk about what the issue is about checking that and why it's a pain in the butt. Okay, I've got the floor open here, and opening this panel it's not really that much of a pain to do that, to check your master cylinder. It's what you have to do after that. Okay, so let's just hop up in here. And let's see, I've got a screwdriver that's actually pointing to the vent line and I'm going to show you that in a minute as soon as I get my flashlight kind of in here. And let's see, anyways, that's where the vent line is connected, okay? And that vent line has to be there, okay? If you don't have that vent line, you have a problem unless you've got the remote master cylinder and it's vented through that remote master cylinder. What that is it connects to the central vent system, which then goes up under your hood if it's got the original factory setup, and has to do with being able to go through some pretty deep water with it. And I'm not talking about the deep water fording kits, which bring stuff up even higher. But normally, traditionally, a master cylinder, or I should say a lot of master cylinders in a lot of vehicles, and especially today, they sit up under the hood. And they vent. They'll have a vent in them. And so, they're not sitting in the water. Well, being down on the floor, they could sit in the water. And then, of course, if that just had a regular cap on it, then the water would get inside. Okay. So taking that vent line on and off every time you have to check it, it's basically just like a brake line with a 3/8 fitting on it. You have to use a flare knot wrench to do it. And believe it or not, as much space as there is in all these deuces, there's not really much space to run that wrench around and move it. So you'll notice whether you get one from the military or whether you get one from a personal owner, if they've been checking it, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times that that fitting will be rounded off some because they've either used a regular crescent wrench or adjustable wrench or something like that, or they've just slipped because they haven't got it on there all the way. So that's that factor, and of course there are some vent lines that aren't even hooked up, which that's not good either. But we won't get into that. But now let's talk about the fact that they're a single circuit. Okay, what that means is the whole system is on one reservoir, one tank. I will say one reservoir tank. It's not separated, and the system's not separated. So what happens is if you lose a brake line, you get a big hole in it, you have no brakes. Okay, you don't have brakes. You don't just slowly lose brakes and have a diminished capacity to stop. You have no brakes because it won't build any pressure whatsoever. The only way it'll build pressure really is if that line were cut off, okay, and sealed, or if we're talking seepage, a tiny hole. So it's not lowering the hydraulic pressure really, it's just slowly dissipating the fluid. Okay, that's where that remote reservoir will come in handy. There's two things about it, but it doesn't turn it into a dual circuit brake, and it doesn't give you more time to stop. Okay, it doesn't give you more time to stop. Let me repeat that again. It doesn't give you more fluid loss, and then you can stop. No, what it does is let you know that you're having fluid loss. So maybe you see that and go, oh crap, I have no brakes. How am I going to stop when it comes time to stop? I'll start slowing down now by gearing down, and maybe I can, run off the road into that sand pit or whatever. Maybe there's time to do it, and maybe there isn't. So, in that sense, it lets you know. Now, on the other hand, if you're just noticing that, and you can glance over at that, and you're noticing that it's starting to go down a little bit. Well, geez, maybe there's some sort of seepage or something. That's when it really comes in handy, because then you can investigate the problem, and you're still able to stop. And at the point you notice that, you need to figure out what it is that's going on, take it off the road and then figure out what the heck's going on. So, those remote reservoirs are a good idea for that reason. But a lot of people don't understand that really why they add some safety, they don't add the safety you think they do. So upgrading to the dual circuit is really kind of the way to go. And the other great thing about that remote reservoir, which is that you don't need that vent anymore, because that's where it hooks, is where that vent is. It hooks into that vent system where the vent would be, and you have to plug the T in the vent that goes into the central system. It vents out the cap of that reservoir, so as long as that reservoir is up high, technically that's not going to be your issue as far as forwarding water to that depth, as long as you don't forward over the cap. So just wanted to bring that up. They're not a bad idea. I don't like the fact that they're plastic, but even the reservoir, the dual reservoir for the upgraded trucks is actually a plastic reservoir. And most cars and trucks today are plastic reservoirs. But anyways, I just want to bring that up. And again, I want to stress to you that if you lose a line, if you blow a line out, your deuce does not have brakes. It doesn't like you slowly lose air. It's like a tire getting a big hole cut in, and it just goes whoop, and it's down. Unlike a small leak or something like that. So that's what I had for you today. Oh, and just to show you real quick, that's where it tees into the central vent system.